Hello viewers, welcome once again to another edition of our literary program. Yes, today we will be in conversation with a few young minds today in this session of our literary program. Well, as you always have been watching this program in conversation, time and time again we have brought before you young writers, young scholars, young poets and authors, etc. to showcase their skill, their zeal into writing, into reading. They express themselves from the bottom of their heart because they tell us about what brought them into this domain. And yes, they speak their minds out. And that's the beauty of this program, because we give a platform to young budding authors and writers to showcase their skill, their talent. Because besides being students, besides being into academics, they also spare some time out of their busy schedule, and they write, they express, and they are inspired by so much that they see around them. So I am in the midst of three such beautiful people once again in this program. And so let me go ahead and introduce them. And incidentally, they're all students from the English Literature Department of the Northeastern Hill University here in Shillong. So may I go now and introduce them. To my left is Rita Brata Bhattacharjee. Now Rita Brata Bhattacharjee is into short story writing. She is into writing poems as well, right, Rita Brata? I also am being joined right at the center by Namrata Sharma. Now Namrata Sharma is doing something different and a bit unique, so to say, because she not only writes poems and recites them also, but she's also into storytelling. So I found it very fascinating and very different. She will be doing us a bit and showcasing that as well later. And we are also being joined to my extreme left is Flora M. Basumatari. She is also into short story writing. So hi there girls, and a warm round of welcome to each one of you. Thank you so much for coming all the way from NEHU hostel. It's quite a distance to our studio here in Lightcore. How are each one of you? How are you all?
We are fine, ma'am. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Most welcome, most welcome. And it's such an honor, such a pleasure for us to have you, because you all are a little bit senior, because you all told me you all are almost completing your master's program, right? So I have just given a very, very brief introduction. Can we have your introduction once again, because I'm sure each one of you have so much more to speak about your hobbies and etc., where you come from. So Rita Brata, what brings you to Shillong?
My parents are from Alipurdwar, but I was born and brought up like in my initial years in Delhi. So I was away from my culture, and just like that, after that I never got a chance to go to West Bengal. I went to Assam. I stayed there. I did my second part, from 4th to college I did there in Guwahati, and after that I decided to come here because I did not want to go away from home after that.
Okay.
NEHU is a very good university and it's closer to home, so that whenever there is chance I can go back to home. That's why I chose NEHU.
That's how. So from Bengal to Assam, from Assam to Meghalaya.
Yes, ma'am.
Not too bad. I'm sure you have written also stories because of these kind of journeys that you have undertaken so far.
Yes,
I'm sure there are inspiring moments. Let's come to you, Namrata. Yes. Namrata, tell us a little bit more about you.
Ma'am, actually, I have been very fond of stories, right, since my childhood. And my mother, she did her PhD in folklore, Assamese folklore.
Okay.
And I would always hear about that. And I grew up partly in the campus of Guwahati University.
Okay.
So I was always surrounded in that very academic arena. And I was so fond of storytelling and also listening to stories. So I thought, why not? I should try. And I would try to write as well.
Okay.
And once I wrote a poem, and it was way back in 2008. I was too young, and my mother just sent it to Assam Tribune, and it somehow got published.
Wow.
So I was too young, and I didn't know how it exactly happened. And I never had the idea that I would be into this arena, I would be studying English literature. But I think that is where the seeds were sown.
Okay, exactly. That's what, because, I also wanted to ask this to Flora also as well. Like, what interested you to pick up this subject, literature? Because literature is very vast. It's beautiful, of course, but why did you pick up this? Tell us a little bit more of you, Flora.
My interest in literature actually started from when I was really young, because my parents inculcated the habit of reading in me since a very young age. Initially, my mom used to buy graphic novels for me, because it was easier to understand. So I grew up reading a lot, and she used to buy encyclopedias for me a lot. So I grew up reading a lot, and then I was encouraged to read a lot. I also developed the interest to write short stories because of my father. So when I was young, he used to tell us stories before we go to sleep. So, and he is a very good storyteller. So when he told us stories, that's how I had this thought in my mind that even I want to be like him and write my stories. So I think naturally my interest grew, so I wanted to go into literature because of that. So
yeah, that's nice. And I like, if I can come to Namrata, storytelling.
Yes.
It's something different, right? I mean, and I'm sure when I'll ask you all to do so, when you're writing stories, what kind of stories? Are you writing them for children alone, or is it?
Usually I write for children, but sometimes I also enjoy writing stories, stories that deal with horror genre, stories that are political allegories, stories that are also decolonial allegories, that are not only for children but also for adults. And whenever I actually go to Kavya Kanan in Jorhat, because I grew up in Jorhat, Assam, so there is a beautiful platform called Kavya Kanan, and I often tell stories there. And whenever I tell stories, I make sure I invite the parents as well. I always love it when parents accompany their children. They take out the time to sit and listen to stories, and that is also very crucial for bonding. Nowadays we always hear about iPad kids. Parents just shove an iPad into the face and the duty is done. But gone are those days when our grandparents used to tell stories. So I would love to bring that culture back, where children listen to stories, parents come back, and parents also listen to the same stories they once used to. And many parents do tell me that, oh, you just brought our childhood memories back. We used to hear the same stories but in a different way. So that thing is still there.
How nice. I mean, that you're thinking so out of the box. You're trying to bring the glory of the past, because the past indeed were glorious years, and somehow we are losing them very fast. But to bring them back, and stories, Flora, are imaginations, right? And it also stems from what we see, what we know, what we experience, etc. So what are your stories basically all about?
Mine, I don't consider myself to have a fixed genre, because I like experimenting mostly. So I think I've written a little bit of everything. So I've tried my hand on horror, or I've tried my hand on mystery stories also. But then recently I kind of find myself focusing more on slice of life type of stories, because for me it's I sometimes feel sometimes people tend to take for granted the very small things in life, the small joys. There was one time I wrote a story on a plate of momos, for instance. So things like that. So I really like paying homage to the little things that make
the mundane.
The mundane.
We take it so for granted, and we don't pay so much of our focus or attention. What about Rita Brata? You are strictly into poems, right?
No, ma'am. I write both poetry and
short stories as well as poems. So let's talk about poems here now. What kind of poems? Because you all come from a place called NEHU, which has abundance, at least, of natural inspiration with the nature. If you all are, what I mean. The pines and the beautiful environment around. So your poems speak of what?
Ma'am, before I tell about my poems, one of my favorite novels is Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. So firstly, like if I say, like if my inspiration came from that only, when I heard about that, when I read that, when I saw those imageries and everything, so poetry, the inspiration of poetry came from whatever the emotion is there in my heart. I never think about anything else which is outside or the condition. It's whatever is there in my heart. And just like the character of Heathcliff, I also used to suffer with my anger issues. That's when my parents and the counselor in my school suggested me, maybe you can scribble something that will help you cope with this. They asked me to scribble just random writings, but what came out was in form of poetry. So that's how I discovered that maybe I should.
You can express yourself in this form of writing. So then coming back again to what kind of poems therefore you write now, that was then, and now presently what are you?
Now presently, ma'am, I mostly focus on imageries, because I think that's how I can bestly, like properly explore my imagination and also existentialism. That has been a very important theme throughout my life, because that inspired me a lot, because through existentialism I can find meaning in my life. That's why I focus on those kind of poetries.
Wonderful. You know, we have so many authors, both foreign, Indian writing in English is really growing, and Indian writers from English writers from the Northeast also. I mean, so many of them are actually making a mark. So how deep are you all into reading? Because yes, you all said initially, you know, you all heard stories, you all read a bit, but how important do you think is reading also to, you know, to clarify your thoughts, your ideas, and to bring in certain thoughts into your own writing of those authors that may be read? Let me ask you, Namrata, are you also into reading now?
Yes, I'm very much into reading. Because as a child I was quite a sickly child, so playing was not really allowed, so to say, and I stuck to reading. Even now at home or wherever I stay, most of the space is actually covered by books. Even in my bedroom, I sleep like a small mouse, and there's book everywhere.
Oh my!
True.
So you're seriously into reading, right?
True.
And that has helped you, haven't it? I mean, I'm sure it has.
Yes.
What about you, Flora?
Ma'am, so I'll have to be honest here. I do really love reading. But then there's this one thing that like I've become a victim of, that a lot of others also have become a victim of. I think after the COVID-19 phenomenon, like my concentration has dipped a lot. So it's been really difficult to read lately. But like it's not like I dislike reading. I badly want to get back into reading, but it's been hard to get back into it. But like according to me, reading is extremely important, especially for people who want to go into the writing business, mostly because there's so much insights that we can gather from many books. Like the more you read, the more you learn. Like for me,
and that can polish you also, your writing skill.
Yes.
Quickly, I would want to know, now there's so much of Kindle. Between a book and a Kindle, which one would you prefer? All three of you. I mean, any one of you can answer.
Book. Definitely book always.
Why would you say that? I mean, come on, we are in the age of technology. They say that I can carry a Kindle anywhere. Of course, I can carry a book also. But why? Because this is something, you know, which I would want to figure out, because so many books are written in both the versions, right? In paper version as well as in the Kindle. But you all prefer the book. Nothing like a smell of that.
Yes,
I know.
Yes. And the emotional connection that we have with the book, we can never have it with an electronic device.
That's true.
The weight of a book just feels comforting to hold. A Kindle can't give that.
And as she said, you know, she sleeps like a little mouse, and all her paper books are all around her. Right?
True.
Okay. Now let's come into some, your hear you right now. I would like to begin with you, Namrata. You said that short stories. Do you have any short story for us to, you know, express, to narrate?
Yes. Right now in my mind, there is one colonial allegory,
Okay.
where I talk about Assam, Meghalaya and Nagaland,
Okay.
but in the form of 3 girls.
Ah, okay.
So, should I begin?
Yeah, please go
Yes.
ahead. Yes.
So this tale is a tale long ago, tale that is forgotten. The tale that was sung by the red Brahmaputra and the blue Nilgiri hills. So this was a tale of 3 girls, Harodi, Sumi and Meghali. Harodi was the beautiful child. She was born in autumn and she would play along with the Kaziranga and she would call out the elephants of Kaziranga, "Oi, Dhonai!" And the elephants would actually reply back. Meghali could summon the clouds. She was born in the clouds, in fact. And she would also connect herself to the deities of the forest. The enchanted forest would always hear her prayers. And then there was Sumi, the most beautiful child. She was actually covered in fog, mist, and she smelled divine. And she had lavenders growing from all her skin. And 3 of them, they would play together. But one day, what happened? There were guns sounding. There were horses. And suddenly few men came and captured them. And they said, "Troops, catch these little girls and cage them." Harodi immediately grew anxious. And she said, "Run, Sumi, run. Run away to the hills of Kohima. Run, Meghali, run. Hide yourself in the caves of Sora." And so did they. Sumi ran into the hills of Kohima and covered herself with a blanket of fog. And Meghali also ran into the caves of Sora. But Meghali was caught. She was caught immediately and she was caged inside. From the cave she was taken out and she was caged and she was forced not to wear the Jenkisha ever again. She was dressed in a petticoat and a blouse and the corset was so tight that she died instantly. Sumi too. The foggy blanket was cut open. And then they said, "This could be a good land for an industry. Why not?" And Sumi just choked herself to death. Harodi too was caught. The entire field of Kaziranga, the jungle of Kaziranga, the moors and even the canopies, they were all chopped down just to search Harodi. And Harodi was caught too. She was told that her mekhela is not civilized. She told that she could never wear the mekhela again. She was forced to wear a petticoat and a blouse. And she was said to talk in only that language that was printed out. So she could never talk in her mother tongue ever again. So this is a small instance.
It has so deep a meaning and so much of, the colonial thing that you said, right? Like what has happened to us, since the colonial period. Wonderful, so expressive, so beautiful. Let's come to you, Rita Brata. You would like to narrate for us a poem of yours?
Yes, ma'am,
Yeah?
sure.
So please go ahead, share with us.
Ma'am, this poetry is about war.
Okay.
Because the war is just not outside. The war is there inside our mind, inside our body. We are always fighting. So I call this Twilight of Mankind. In the grim theatre of war, where day becomes night, a haunting symphony of chaos and plight. Beneath the blood-stained sky, where shadows dance, lie a world of agony, harrowing trance. When day becomes night, the battlefield awakes. Echoes of gunfire, the earth trembles and shake. Soldiers march in darkness, their faces grim, as the horrors of war cast a shadowy whim. In trenches where fear reigns supreme, men cling to the rifles trapped in a dream. The cries of the wounded, the stench of decay, fill the air with sorrow that never fades away. When day becomes night, the true face of war emerges, as innocence is lost and humanity diverges. Children's orphaned, families torn apart, the merciless grip of war's callous heart. The sky above, a canvas of despair as bombs rain down, leaving destruction everywhere. Cities reduced to rubble, dreams turned to dust in relentless onslaught of power and lust. But amidst the chaos, a different horror lurks, a darkness that festers, a pain that smirks. For in the shadow of war where evil thrives, the vulnerable suffers, their voices deprived. When day becomes night, the predator emerges. Feeding on fear, their intentions converge. Women and children preyed upon by those they trust, in the silence of night, the innocence crushed. Abuse knows no boundary, no time or place. It thrives in the darkness, in war's embrace. Soldiers turned monsters, their heart black as night, inflicting pain and suffering with all their might. But even in the darkest hour, their flicker of hope, a light that shines through the shadow, helping them to cope. For amidst the rain, the human spirit prevails, in act of courage and kindness, where love never fails. When day becomes night, a war rages on. Let us not forget those innocents who is gone. May their voice be heard, may their pain be acknowledged, and may we strive for a world where abuse is abolished. With young soldiers' blood erased by rain, all their lives lost in the war of vain, the downpour of darkness and sorrow of war, the piled bodies of nameless soldiers, images gore. Let us stand together in the face of the night and shine a light on darkness with all our might. For when the day becomes night and horrors abound, it's up to us to spread love and heal what's been found.
You at least ended on a positive note, right? Because all that change that we are talking about begins from the self,
Yes.
isn't it? Of course. You know, the current situation, what we see every day, it is horrific, it is
Yes.
scary. What about you, Flora? What have you got for us to share today?
Ma'am, I have a few of my short stories that I wrote. I'll be reciting one. So this one is just like a kind of a fantasy thing, but I've left it open-ended. It's called Of Scars and Stories. Grandpa, Marie tentatively opened the door. The room was in darkness. Feeling apprehensive, she called again. Grandpa, are you there? Immense relief washed over her when she heard a shaky voice answer her. Yes, dear, I'm here. Marie quickly scampered forward and sat next to her smiling grandfather on the bed. She loved the old man more than anyone else in the whole world. He had always been the one who understood her the most. What is it that you wanted again, dear? He asked kindly, while running his hand lovingly over her head. He loved his little granddaughter equally as much, maybe even more. She was his little angel, the one who filled his end of days with warm, bright light. Grandpa, Mary began excitedly, can you tell me another one of your stories from the sea? The one where you battled with the big sea monster? Oh, that! Grandfather David gave a hearty laugh that filled the melancholic house with color once more. That wasn't a sea monster, my dear. That was a shark. David had been a sailor when he was young. A brawny young man with ripped muscles, he'd sailed high and low, far and wide, from the Pacific to the Atlantic, and he had many stories to tell. Mary especially loved listening to those stories and always begged her grandfather to tell her more and more of them. She loved his tales of his marine exploits, pirates, and especially the unique sea creatures he always seemed to meet. Well now, there was once a time when a great white shark attacked our ship. He began, his eyes shining as he lost himself into the dreamy and adventurous world he loved so much. It was a brute, that shark, cut off our anchor and then proceeded on to make a hole on our hull. It even ate 2 of our men who fell off the ship while trying to stop him. Oh goodness, Mary exclaimed, with eyes as wide as saucers. And then, what happened? The shark was unstoppable. David made wriggly motions with his fingers as he spoke in order to add emphasis to his words and made Mary shriek with laughter. But your grandpa David was definitely not going to let it go scot-free after what it had done. He grabbed the big harpoon that lay on the deck and jumped overboard. Gosh, Grandpa, you did that. Aye, me lass. Your grandpa was ready to sacrifice himself for the sake of his old mates. Riled by his own storytelling, David spoke in the quaint sailor accent that had been forgotten for so many years. He fought the big old brute like ne'er before. It was a fierce battle, I'll tell ya. Both a fighting like two demons dragged right out of hell, with the devil himself as judge. Mary clapped in excitement and leaned forward expectantly. She couldn't wait to hear what happened next. But bloody luck was by your grandpa's side. David ended dramatically. He gripped the harpoon and shoved it near the brute's snout, giving him a present from his side, an ugly scar that suited him well. And the sea was tainted red, like the waters themselves had split blood. But Grandpa, how can the sea bleed? Mary argued. Isn't blood water as well? Ah, no, me lass. David gave another hearty laugh and patted his granddaughter. Blood is definitely liquid, but blood and water are not the same. They are not the same at all. Oh yes, I know, Mary said enthusiastically. Blood is red, water is not. Yes, that is so, David smiled, but it is much more than that. Someday, when the time is right, I will show you how. More than happy with that prospect, Mary beamed and snuggled against her grandfather. She wanted to spend the entire evening with him, but of course she wasn't allowed to. Right as she was starting to get comfortable, she heard her mother's shrill voice call out for her, and she definitely didn't sound pleased. With a sour face, Mary went to her mother. Mary's mother, Martha, didn't approve of her daughter going to see David so often. She disliked the old man's tales from the sea and thought they contained unnecessary amount of violence for a girl as young as Mary. She feared that Mary was learning more about pirates and sea battles than learning about the Bible and the truth. Time passed and Mary grew. Wedged between her admiration and love for her grandfather's stories and her mother's distaste for them, Mary's life took the predictable turn when she chose to heed the call of the ocean and became a student of marine biology. It was her research that brought her to the quiet of the ocean. Under the starry night, bobbing up and down on a small boat, feeling the waves as much as the keel did. Her mind drifted even as her fingers stroked the Swiss knife, tracing its ridges, thinking about her grandfather, and how to this day water seemed to her thicker than blood. It was then that she felt the knife sink into the soft flesh of her thumb, and a thick drop of crimson merged with the turquoise of the ocean. The boat rocked, and she felt the water carry her in a smooth motion, almost as if it had a conversation to make. It was then that she saw him. The massive jet shoot out water, his snout still bearing the battle mark. The song he sang that night would keep her company for the rest of her life.
Okay. So I think I can find you a lot also in that, right? Like your grandfather, because you did say that your So yeah, so what we hear from each one of you is that you all have read stories, heard stories being told. But then what is the future like? Because each one of you, like your work, your short stories, you, the way you narrated, she as well. I mean, I can see a lot of prospects of future authors, of writers in the making. So what quick conclusion would you like to tell? Like, let me start with Rita Brata. What are the future plans that after you finish? Do you all want to pursue it even further?
Yes, ma'am, I will definitely. At present, I have not explored it that much, so I cannot say that this will be my final profession. But whatever profession I choose, I would very much love to work on because without this, I am not what I am today.
Absolutely.
This defines me.
Right. And Namrata, have you also improved your work, like what you did earlier, and to what have you gone back and revisited those work of yours, and then because your work matures, as you grow also.
Yes,
So have
true.
you done that also?
Yes. I constantly do that. And in fact, my aunt too, she too is a writer, and she also is a professor in the University of Guwahati, and she too sometimes looks into my stories and sometimes perhaps the way I deliver it. And even my grandmother helps in that case. And so does my father. He always corrects me whenever he finds that the story is not interesting. And
you will want to take it up in the future also,
yes,
right?
definitely. I do not want a lot of money. I will not name it as a profession, so to say, because whenever we use the word profession, a lot of money comes into play. So maybe not for money.
Passion.
Yes, a passion. And I do want a simple life. I want to live like that same old storyteller, like a witch in a village hut. Children would just flock in and just listen to my stories. That is the kind of life I desire for myself.
I wish you really, really good luck. And what about you, Flora? Any future plans that you've made up for after you complete your masters, etc.?
Ma'am, it's mostly similar for me, like how my friends have said.
Right.
So like for me, story writing is something really personal. So it feels a bit wrong to pursue it as a profession per se, because there's so much other things involved. There's money involved, and like I'm not entirely comfortable being in the spotlight. But like I do want to have like say 1 or 2 books published, but then I have not thought about pursuing it as a profession per se.
But you'll also keep it.
I'll
along
consider,
with you,
yes.
Right? We could have gone on and on actually, because this because y'all are a bit senior, also a little bit more mature also. There was so much actually that we could have spoken, but then there's always another time, another moment, another shared experience that all of us will share with you. But for this moment and for today's program and for coming to the studios, thank you so much, Rita, Namrata and Flora. Thank you so much, and I wish you tons of good luck in the near future as well.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Well, my dear viewers, that was our 3 bright students from NEHU, from the Department of English Literature, speaking their hearts and mind and are also expressing themselves in their talents, as you have heard. I hope you've enjoyed this program. And do join us next time again, when we shall be back with another set of bright minds and in conversation with them. Until that time, from all of us here, it's goodbye.